Hi, I'm DIYte. In today's video I'm going to show you the process that I went through to make my kitchen LED lights dimmable. Now, believe you me, dimming LEDs is an absolute minefield. So in today's video I've got two checklists, one for the dimmer switch itself, the second one for when you're buying your LED lamps, and I'm going to be running through all the pitfalls that you need to avoid. So by the end of this video you'll have all the information that you need to make the right decisions when buying your dimmer switch and LED bulbs. Now, quick word before we start. My video today covers the GU10 LED lamps. If you're looking to install MR16 dimmable LED lamps, which have a separate transformer, unfortunately that's not covered in today's video. Like so many of you out there, I'm at the point now where I'm going to have to retrofit a dimmer to my kitchen lights. When we redid our kitchen about 10 years ago, we didn't really think about what the lighting was going to be like, whether we needed it to be dimmable. We've got 18 GU10 downlights across our kitchen ceiling, and when we installed them, CFLs were the latest in energy saving light bulb technology, so we had a load of Megabands like this. They worked fine for a few years and then they started going almost simultaneously. So then we thought, as LEDs were coming in, let's shove some LEDs up in the ceiling, which is what we did, installing a load of these sort of non-branded things. But then these haven't really lasted for more than a year, a couple of years at a time. And we're now left with the sorry situation of light bulbs that have gone and three central lights which are warm white compared to the rest of the kitchen which are cool white, which I've got to say doesn't look great. And this one here can't make its mind up whether to be dim or really bright. A sign, I think, that the driver inside the bulb is actually on the blink. And also, we find ourselves sometimes sitting in the kitchen in the evening thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could dim the lights? Something we never thought about when we installed the kitchen. So, after a load of research, I ended up with this V-Pro LED dimmer from Verilight, and a load of these Megaman 7 watt 4000K, which is a cool white colour, GU10 lamps that I ended up buying from myswitchshop.com. But before we take a close look at the hardware, let's have a look at why dimming your LEDs is such a minefield. So why is it so hard to dim LED bulbs? Well, I'll start paraphrasing a quote that I recently saw on a website called luxreview.com. They basically say the message that's coming out repeatedly in the industry is you can't assume anything, you've got to check, check and check again. The days 10, 15 years ago when we had the old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, the filament bulbs, when they could be dimmed by pretty much anything, are sadly behind us. This is because we're now in a world where electronic circuitry in the dimmer speaks to electronic circuitry in the lamps themselves, which I'll be talking about today. And those two circuitries have to be compatible with each other to work. Added to that, this is a completely unregulated marketplace, would you believe? And there is no overarching standard yet in place to guarantee a unified performance. So we're in the Wild West, guys. We've got to tread really carefully in this unregulated marketplace when we buy dimmer switches and LED lamps to go with them. So let's start with dimmers, and we'll run through the points on my dimmers checklist. There are two forms of dimmer switch on the market: leading edge and trailing edge. Leading edge dimmers are by far the most common dim and control in existence. They're simpler and cheaper than trailing edge dimmers, and they were typically used in the old-fashioned bulbs that we were using up to 10 or 15 years ago, the incandescent bulbs, and also for halogen bulbs. Crucially, many leading edge dimmers have a high minimum load that rules out their use with LEDs and CFL circuits. Where a lot of people go wrong is they've retrofitted LED lamps into their ceilings, and then they just go out and buy a normal leading edge dimmer and wonder why it's not working. But if you've got a leading edge dimmer on your lighting circuit, help may be at hand, because Megaman's new 7 watt LED reflectors, like these ones that I'll be installing in today's video, have something called UDIM technology, which they say is a breakthrough in dimming technology because it even makes their lamps compatible with leading edge dimmers. So it could be you can use these lamps on your leading edge dimmer, but don't take my word for it. Phone up Megaman and ask them yourself if your leading edge dimmer will be compatible. So that leads us on to trailing edge dimmers like the Verilight V-Pro that I showed you a few moments ago in the video. In short, trailing edge dimmers are designed for LEDs. They're more sophisticated than leading edge, which also means they're more expensive, unfortunately. They've got a lower minimum load, which means they're much better for low-powered lighting circuits like LEDs. Crucially, you can only have one trailing edge dimmer on a lighting circuit. So if, like me, you've got two-way lighting controls in your kitchen, where you've got two switches in the room, operating one lighting circuit, you can only dim that lighting circuit from one switch. Okay, compatibility of the dimmer with the LED lamps themselves is very important. Old-fashioned light bulbs were dimmable by default, but LEDs have a built-in driver in their base. Without getting too technical, the driver converts the AC or alternating current power that most of us, particularly in the UK, have in our homes into DC or direct current. And that way it maintains a constant current to the LED lamp itself, which is a problem when you're trying to dim it, because the dimmer will try and make up the parts of the input voltage that are missing when you try and dim the circuit. LEDs should be fully dimmable, and they are when they're paired with a compatible dimmer. But in the UK market, and no doubt overseas, there are widespread compatibility problems with supposedly dimmable LEDs only working with certain dimming control systems. And that means you get problems. For example, flickering lights, flashing lights, popcorning. Trailing edge dimmers tend to increase the chance of compatibility with the LEDs because they tend to work better with the loads of the LED drivers. That's why I bought the DIYte V Pro dimmer, because it has a reputation in the market for delivering one of the best dimming performances with LEDs. But I told you this was a minefield. Just buying an industry-leading dimmer like the V Pro is not the end of the story. As you'll see later on in the video, I got caught out because I bought great lamps that were advertised as being dimmable, but unfortunately they weren't very compatible with the V Pro, and the dimming range of the lamps themselves was a rubbish. So when you invest in a sophisticated piece of hardware like the V Pro, it doesn't come cheap. Mine cost £53, but for that price you get some great versatility. This dimmer can be programmed between leading edge and trailing edge, and crucially, which is the next point that we're coming on to now, you can also adjust the minimum brightness of the bulbs. And there's a great YouTube video by DIYte that shows you how to adjust the minimum brightness, details for which I will include in the description at the end of the video. Now, the last point to make in this section is just as important as the others. You have to look at the number of lamps on your electrical circuit, calculate the maximum load of all those lamps, and then work out whether that load comes within the minimum and maximum load thresholds of the dimmer switch you're thinking of buying. Just to illustrate the point, here is a table from the DIYte website that shows all the different dimmer products they do and the different loads that each product is suitable for. The V Pro, which is the one I've got and I'll be showing you in the video, is suitable if you have a LED load that's more than 10 lamps or 100 watts, and it's suitable for up to 30 LED lamps. Maximum load of 300 watts per gang. So you've simply got to look at the wattage on your lamps, so in my case they're 7 watts, and multiply that by the number of lamps you've got in your room. Now in our kitchen it's a little bit tricky because we've actually got 18 lamps, but we've got 3 on one circuit and 15 on the other. So I was a bit concerned about the circuit with just the 3 lamps on it, but I spoke to DIYte and they said that the V Pro is versatile enough to cope with loads that low. So I guess what comes out of this is, if in doubt, phone up the manufacturer that you're thinking of buying the dimmer switch from, and double check with them if you've got any concerns. So we're now moving on to the LED lamps themselves. And I've got 5 basic headings to cover on my checklist. Compatibility of the lamp with the dimmer, the need to buy decent quality branded lamps with a minimum 2-year warranty, and getting the right colour temperature for the room where you're putting them. Finally, the importance of not mixing and matching LEDs from different manufacturers on the same dimming circuit. So compatibility, well, we've already dealt with this in relation to the dimmer, but it obviously works sort of the same way in relation to the lamps that you're installing. As I said to you, I recently bought some lamps. They had a fantastic light, arguably better than the Megamans that I'm going to show you in a minute. But as soon as I tried the dimmer on them, I was really disappointed with the dimming range of the lamps. So I phoned the retailer and they actually said to me that they had been working with DIYte and there was a version of the V Pro that they could send me that had been specifically tailored to these particular lamps. And that was very kind of them, and I have to say I can't fault their customer service throughout the whole process in terms of refunds, etc, etc. But my point to them was this: if I was to accept their modified dimmer now, and then in 2 years' time their company had gone out of business or they discontinued the particular lamps, then I'd have a compatibility problem. So you've got to ensure that your lamps are compatible not only now when you're installing them, but in 2 years' time when the lamps need replacing. And this takes us really neatly onto the second point on the checklist. Don't buy cheap, buy branded lamps. And you'll find a lot of reviews on the internet that say you should be spending at least £10 or £11 on your dimmable LEDs. Now this is relevant to the point I just made, because if you buy a load of lamps now, like the 18 that I've got to put on my circuit from a manufacturer, and then in 12 months time, for example, the manufacturer goes bust and your lamps start failing, you shouldn't be mixing and matching, which is the point we come on to in a bit, the lamps on your circuit. So potentially you've got two problems. You've got to replace the entire circuit of lamps because you shouldn't be mixing and matching, but also you're potentially going to have a compatibility issue with the new lamps that you're putting onto the circuit with the dimmer. So by buying good quality lamps from a decent brand, whilst that brand may well change the product line, they might change the specification of the lamps, you always run the risk of that, the chances of that manufacturer going out of business are a lot less than, for example, if you were to buy a random unbranded lamp from a Chinese supplier. And then it becomes a virtuous circle, because if you do buy your lamps from a decent manufacturer, the chances are you're going to get at least a 2-year warranty. I think I get a 3-year warranty with these Megamans, and a working life of 25,000 hours. Now, in terms of choosing the right colour temperature for your LED lamps, this can get pretty technical. I'm going to keep it really simple and say that where you've got a room that's dimly lit and doesn't have a lot of natural light, a bit like the room that I'm filming in today, the advice that I've been given, and there may be differing views out there, is that you want a cool white temperature, because that more accurately reflects the sort of daylight that you're missing in that room than if, for example, you were to go with a warm white temperature, which you might want in rooms where you want a more ambient light. But there's lots of information out there, and I'll include a link at the end of this video to a great article I saw from welllit.co.uk, where they go into a lot of detail on colour temperature if you want to dig that deep. There are other considerations that we could go into, such as the angle of the beam, but I'm not going to go into that for the sake of today. I'll let you to do your own research on the angle of the beam, the optimum angle of the beam for the room that you're putting your lamps into. But I think the last point that's relevant to make today is a point I touched on a few seconds ago about the importance of not mixing and matching your bulbs in the lighting circuit. Point here, which again I saw on luxreview.com, and details for which will be in the description at the end of the video, is that these lamps all have their own individual circuitry. And so if you've mixed and matched your brands, you've got different circuitry in each lamp, and the dimmer may not be able to provide a common signal to all the lamps. And this is a recipe for your lamps flickering, humming, popcorning, that sort of thing. At the end of the day, if you're at all unsure that the lamps that you're thinking of buying are going to be compatible with the dimmer, speak to the dimmer manufacturer. Have they tested the LEDs you're thinking of buying? Are they happy for their product to be connected with those lamps? So after the mishap I had with the LED lamps that I recently bought that functioned really disappointingly with the dimmer, I did what I should have done at the start and what you should do in this situation. I phoned VariLight and I asked them what LED lamps performed best with their dimmer. I'd already seen the Megaman lamps on their YouTube video on how to program the vPro dimmer, so it was pretty obvious to me that that would probably be the best performing lamp. VariLight confirmed to me that the Megaman lamp did have a really good dimmable range with their dimmer, and they also suggested I get in touch with a retailer called myswitchshop.com. So I phoned myswitchshop.com and had a great chat with them. They were able to reassure me about the lamps that I was buying, their dimmable range, colour temperature, all that sort of stuff, and so I ended up buying my lamps from them. So after all that chat, let's actually see how the dimmable LEDs performed. So, I've got to say, after the disappointment of the previous lamps that hardly dimmed at all with vPro, the combination of the vPro dimmer and the Megaman 7W GU10s is absolutely extraordinary. The dimmable range is amazing. The lamps dim literally almost right down to nothing at all. And I may even reprogram the dimmer to adjust the minimum brightness a little bit higher than it is at the moment. Something I never thought I'd have to do. So I really hope you found today's video useful. As usual, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you found this video useful, please hit the like button. And if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here.